The meeting of the Planning Commission will now come to order. Please rise and follow Commissioner Owens in the pledge of allegiance to the flag.
Okay, please repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Will the Planning Secretary please call roll?
Commissioner Uva,
Present.
Commissioners Ortiz and Commissioner Montoya are absent. Vice Chair Owens
Present.
and Chair Duarte.
Present. Okay, this is the time set aside for oral communications from the Planning Commission. Does any commissioner wish to make an announcement or report on a conference or a meeting or request items for future agenda? Commissioner Uva?
Nothing for me.
Thank you. Vice Chair Owens?
Nothing from me, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
And nothing for me. Okay, moving along. Does the Director of Community Development have any changes to the agenda?
Yes, thank you, Chair Duarte. We have two changes tonight. Due to a lack of quorum for tonight's public hearing item, PLN 21-00111, this item will be continued to the meeting of December 15th of this year, of course. And secondly, the minutes of September 15th, we also don't have a quorum to approve those. So that item too will be moved to the December 15th meeting, and that item is on our consent calendar.
Okay, thank you. Does the Director of Community Development have any presentations?
Yes, Chair Duarte, we have a presentation tonight on Senate Bill 9, the new legislation that goes into effect on January 1st that allows for lot splits in our single-family R1 neighborhoods. And so our goal is to provide you a presentation tonight and then return at a future meeting with an ordinance for a recommendation to approval to the City Council as how we're going to comply with state legislation and also put our own flavor on it as well. For instance, we have our own design standards and see how those are going to be incorporated into any new development that occurs in our community. As a backdrop, at least the majority of the commissioners tonight have been with us for, at least 5 or 6 years. And we've seen, as of approximately 2017, a ton of new housing legislation come down. So we've seen approximately, 10 to 12 new laws on average on an annual basis in that time period. Most of them have been to alleviate any sort of a permit application constraints on the development of affordable housing, mostly in the form of density bonuses, where people are allowed to put more housing and less parking, for instance, on a property if they're building affordable products in a community. But SB 9 is probably the most dramatic in that it affects our single-family neighborhoods. The other legislation, once again, is focused more so on multifamily and has been more restricted to our multifamily zones, which are R3 zones, which were more compatible. And then something interesting, all cities have their own character, and Downey hasn't been to date a very strong multifamily or affordable housing community. It's just the composition of the city and just how it's laid out. So we're going to see for the first time legislation that's really going to kind of dive into our backyards. And not only the city of Downey, but this is throughout the state of California. As we talk to our peers in our industry, we're all scuttling doing the same thing, presenting these types of presentations to our planning commissions and putting together ordinances as well to try to manage this. As we look back in retrospect, probably the most similar activity that's occurred is the accessory dwelling units and that law that went into place approximately 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and then was amended 2 years ago. So approximately in 2018 and then 2019, it was amended as well. And so what we found is that the state will move in a hurried pace to get something done. And then it'll come back probably about 8 to 9 months later and provide for revisions or guidance. So we haven't received any guidance besides the law that was written for this, and there isn't a ton of specifics to it. And they do that somewhat intentionally to allow the cities to once again implement it in that fashion. But we anticipate that the state will come back in the summer of 2022 with some revisions to this, and hopefully positive revisions for cities, and that providing more oversight for cities in terms of how we manage this. One thing that we probably will come back to the council with in regards to this are impact fees. Our city doesn't only has one true impact fee, and that's art in public places, and that's a fee of 1% on projects that have a building permit value of $150,000 or more. So it's relatively cheap to build in the city of Downey. Usually in new communities out in the Inland Empire where people are building on hundreds of acres, you'll see impact fees for a lot of infrastructure. But in built-out cities that you don't. But this is going to change the complexity of our community. We're going to have greater impacts to our community, so we're going to need some help in paying for those. And so we're going to work with our finance department on a development impact study. Those are pretty in-depth and usually take anywhere from 4 to 6 months. So I anticipate that we'll wrap that into the greater city budget towards June of next year and add those fees to these types of developments as well. And also, I wouldn't be surprised if we're back in front of the Planning Commission, as I mentioned, in the summer of 2022, with revisions of this ordinance based on what we've learned. We have gotten some inquiries, at our counter, a lot from the real estate community, because you've got different values that are in play with properties now. If you drive through your neighborhoods or neighborhoods in Downey, and if there's a vacant lot, there's a high likelihood that lot may now have 4 units as opposed to one single family home on it. So we're going to monitor it closely. We'll see what happens, in the first half of 2022 in terms of applications. On the ADU side, we've seen a steady stream of accessory dwelling unit applications within our community. We forecasted approximately 100 a year that we would see. And we're a city with big lots, and a lot of those big lots aren't filled with a lot of units on them. So I think people are seeing the opportunity to do so, either to house their immediate family or to produce a rental income on those properties. And so we'll have to wait and see the direction that the development community or real estate community goes in terms of how they view Senate Bill 9. So with that tonight, making our presentation is our city planner, Crystal Landavaza.
Good evening, Chair and members of the Commission. Tonight, as discussed, we're providing an overview for you for Senate Bill 9. This is another piece of legislation, again, that was recently signed by the governor in their continued effort to promote housing development throughout the state. The bill is commonly referred to as a duplex bill or the urban lot split bill because it preempts many local zoning ordinances to allow for duplexes and subdivisions within our single-family neighborhoods. To start off, we'll go over what the bill actually does. There are 2 main components to the bill. First, it allows for 2 units to be built on a single-family zoned property, so that would be any R1 zoned property within the city of Downey. This can be done by adding another unit to a site that already has an existing residence, or the demolition of an existing residence on the property in order to build 2 new units in its place. The important part for us is that a unit in this bill is defined as a primary unit, a accessory dwelling unit, or a junior accessory dwelling unit. So any unit in any form counts toward that 2 maximum per lot. Secondly, what the bill does, however, is that it allows for the subdivision of a property by establishing a new minimum lot size. So now you'll see up on the slide in front of you, a minimum lot size of 1,200 square feet is what is in place. New lots that are split in, from an existing lot must be at least 40% the original size of the lot. So as an example and for comparison, our current minimum lot size in the city of Downey for an R1 zone is 5,000 square feet. So when applying these, the 40% requirement would result in 1 lot of 3,000 square feet and 1 lot of 2,000 square feet. And again, each of these new lots would be able to develop 2 new units, so we would have a total of 4 units where we previously only had 1. This bill applies again to any single-family residentially zoned property within a city boundary, but it does exclude historically designated properties. So specifically for the city of Downey, this would apply to properties zoned R1 5000, R1 6000, R1 7500, R1 8500, and R1 10000. As with other recent legislation intended to promote housing development, the bill specifies that the development occurring under these regulations must be reviewed administratively and cannot be subject to any discretionary applications that would require public hearings. So in the city of Downey, this would mean that site plan review and conditional use permits cannot be required for these applications. And again, the bill to encourage development allows property owners to maintain their existing conditions. So in other words, if there is an existing nonconformity, such as a non-compliant setback, the owner is not required to correct this nonconformity in order to develop under this bill. Additionally, they're allowed to rebuild an existing nonconforming structure so long as they build it to the same size and location as the original structure. The bill does have some limitations when it comes to tenant-occupied properties. There are restrictions to demolishing tenant-occupied properties, as noted up on the slide before you. Any properties that have a covenant restricting a property to affordable housing or that is subject to some type of rent control, this bill does not allow the alteration or demolition of those units to preserve tenant-occupied housing. If there is a property that has been occupied by a tenant within the last 3 years, there's a limitation to 25% of the exterior structural walls that can be demolished. The intent of this is so that an additional unit can be added on to that, but you wouldn't remove the existing unit that's occupied by a tenant. For owner-occupied properties, they're able to utilize SB9 subdivisions only once on the property, and so that is an important aspect of the bill that we do intend to monitor and make sure that is being enforced. So, for example, in an R1 10,000 zoned property, they would not be able to continuously subdivide those properties till they get down to the minimum 1,200 square foot lot. They would only be able to apply this once to that property. Additionally, there is a requirement that if one owner who owns a property subdivides that through an urban lot split, and they happen to own the adjacent property, they would not be able to do an urban lot split on that property as well. So you couldn't do it to an adjacent property. Again, a consistent trend in recent housing legislation is that common development standards throughout many cities, such as setbacks, are seen as a hindrance to housing development. So this bill preempts local zoning codes by setting a minimum setback of 4 feet from side and rear property lines. However, front yard setbacks are still in place. Again, the duplex bill seeks flexibility in development patterns. So a setback can be reduced to 0 and allows structures on adjacent lots to be connected, provided they meet building code requirements, such as providing a firewall between these units. Again, as a reminder on the screen, non-conforming structures are allowed to remain on the property, and they're allowed to be replaced without being brought into compliance. Did I skip? Parking, okay. Another item seen as a hindrance to development are local parking requirements. For this reason, the bill reduces parking to 1 parking space per unit. Currently, our code requires 2 parking spaces per single-family residence, and this would be reduced down. Additionally, the bill does specify that if a property is located within 1/2 mile of a high-quality transit corridor or 1/2 mile of a major transit stop, then no parking is required for any units on the property. For reference, the map provided on the slide identifies high-quality transit corridors within the city, along with high-quality transit stops, and the area circled in there shows the 1/2 mile boundaries around the corridor and around the transit stops. So R1 properties located within these areas would not be required to provide any on-site parking when developing under SB9 regulations. This bill does allow the city to require easements in association with the urban lot splits to ensure that new lots can be accessed from the public right-of-way and provided with necessary utility connections, like water and sewer. However, the city will not be able to require off-site improvements in conjunction with these developments like we would for other housing or commercial developments, with, again, the anticipation of converting one single-family residence into 4 new units. There is anticipation that this will eventually cause a burden to the city, and that is why, as the Director Schindler noted, we will be looking into potential impact fees associated with these. There are restrictions that can be placed on these developments to ensure that they are meeting the intent of addressing the housing need. And the city will be following through with these restrictions. The city will prohibit these units from being used as vacation rentals and will require owners to record an affidavit that states the owner must occupy one of the units for at least 3 years. And again, the bill does limit only one lot split on a property, and the same owner is not allowed to split adjacent properties. Most of the recent housing legislation has been consistent in prohibiting subjective standards for residential development and emphasized that that only clear and objective standards can be applied to housing development. The Planning Commission and the City Council recently reviewed and adopted residential design criteria for single-family residential zones. Although some of our standards, like side and rear yard setbacks, have been preempted by this bill, the remaining objective design standards will still be applied. So as a refresher, the city's R1 design guidelines were clearly identified with goals and principles that are objectively applicable to all R1 properties. The guidelines are clearly stated and provided for all residents. Residents are provided with a simple checklist to show them how to obtain approval and are given an appeal process. This process was developed to be clear and objective in order to simplify single-family development, so it will be applied to new SB 9 development. Before you now is a sample of the type of development that can result from this bill. The lot shown is a 5,000 square foot lot and can be split into 3,000 square feet and 2,000 square feet. This example shows 2-story units and an easement for vehicle and utility access from the public right-of-way. The next sample is a 7,500 square foot lot located within a high-quality transit area. This lot could be split into a 3,000 square foot lot and a 4,500 square foot lot with no parking on site. An easement would still be required to provide pedestrian access from the public right-of-way, pedestrian and utility access. You can see in this example, as in the last example, that these structures on the adjacent lots are attached and have no building separation. And again, this is where the side property line can be reduced down to 0 between those units so that they are connected. As we've discussed, SB 9 preempted many of the city's local zoning ordinances and regulations, primarily density, minimum lot sizes, and setbacks. However, the city still does believe it's prudent to adopt its own ordinance to formalize these regulations and incorporate additional standards that would ensure these regulations both comply with state law and preserve the character of our single-family neighborhoods. The city will seek to preserve mature trees from being removed as part of these developments, encourage sustainable development through LEED certification, require inspections every 6 months for 3 years to ensure compliance with the owner occupancy requirement, and recording of covenants to require disclosure of conditions for these developments. Both the state and the city seek to encourage affordable housing for residents, so the city is seeking to require units are restricted as affordable under these developments. Additionally, as seen in one of the examples, the reduced setback to only 4 feet and increased density significantly alters our single-family neighborhoods. A 2-story structure at 4 foot from the property line can be a significant impact to our single-family neighborhoods. So staff is looking to seek a 1-story height limitation for these structures. Staff will seek an urgency ordinance from the City Council in January so that the proposed standards will go into effect for any new proposals under the SB 9 legislation. The next step will be to formalize the ordinance for a public hearing before the Planning Commission in order to make a recommendation to the City Council. I do want to note, as Director Schindler had noted, that staff is planning to monitor these applications as they are received and they are constructed so that we can identify any additional needs for clarification or additional regulations that need to be added into that ordinance. And we'll be bringing that back for the Planning Commission and the City Council's review once we've assessed what the actual impacts are of this bill. And this concludes staff's presentation. I'm available for any questions from the commission.
Thank you. Commissioner Ua, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Vice Chair Owens?
None. Thank you, Ms. Landabazo.
And I have none. Thank you very much.
Sure, and Planning Commissioners, if I might say, you'll receive a similar presentation when we asked for your recommendation to propose the new ordinance to our City Council. As you know, our hands are tied on a lot of these things in terms of what the state's requiring us to do. So this is a process we have to go through. If you have any questions or if anything comes up, or if your neighbors or people that you know are asking you questions, feel free to give us a call or feel free to refer people to us as well.
Thank you.
I have a comment. So certainly we want to be compliant. January 1 is the day. What is really the expectation for us as a body to make a recommendation on something to council? 30 days, 60 days, 2 weeks?
Well, as Crystal and I mentioned, you know, our goal is to be in front of you in the first meeting in January, so that we're in front of the council in their first meeting in January. So, you know, it's approximately 30 days away.
Okay. I saw the drawings. I'm trying to, in my mind, think, okay, does that fit, you know, on my property? Does it fit, you know, in my general neighborhood? Really doesn't. But understanding that with the corridor, you know, indications of the mass transit opportunities, you know, or public transportation. Yeah, this is going to be a challenge like the ADUs were. And so I'm just, again, trying to suck it all in at the moment. And hopefully we'll have at least 2 more meetings, I think, calendared maybe to, we'll continue discussion on this, or tonight's the night only?
Well, tonight was the presentation, and so our plan is to bring this back to you one more time.
Okay.
For your recommendation with that. And once again, if you'd like, we can forward you this PowerPoint presentation so that you can mull it over. We can also forward you the law or any other data that we have to allow you once again to take your time to review it and see if you have any questions that pop up, so that you're better prepared when we do present the ordinance to you.
Okay, do you want that in an email request, or can I just request it now?
If that's what you want, we can do
Please,
that.
please.
No, not a problem. We know it's a lot.
Okay.
And I mean, and this affects everybody. I mean, you know, I don't live in Downey, and it affects me, you know.
It's
where I'm
coming
gonna
to you
live.
too, sure.
Yeah, it's everywhere. And there's some good and bad about it. I mean, it's hard to buy a house now. And, you know, personally, I have 3 kids. I have an 18-year-old, a 20-year-old, and a 22-year-old. So my 22-year-old will be finishing college next year, and he's not going to land a job that's going to allow him to buy $1 million home. And so, you know, this has the good and bad to it. But once again, where we get a little nervous is how quickly it can change a complexity of a single-family neighborhood. We've done a great job, and we being staff primarily who are doing all the legwork in regards to the housing element updates that we're going through. And we're going to provide a presentation of that to you at the next meeting, in that the state is mandating that we increase the ability for people to build more units in our community. And this is happening statewide as well. We've mentioned it a couple times, and we've had community meetings on this topic as well. So, you know, our current inventory that we were supposed to reach in a 7-year cycle was, I believe, 1,400 units. Now that's increased for the next 8 years to 6,500 units. And we're not going to meet the 1,400 units. We're about 400 units. And once again, we as municipal employees, or we as city government, don't build things. You know, it's the private sector that builds things. We allow for the zoning. So it puts us in a bind in regards to how much is really going to be built. Regardless, you know, where do you put 6,500 units? And so we're proposing for allowance of residential development in a lot of non-traditional areas. So a lot of our shopping centers and a lot of our commercial corridors. So, but what we've been able to do with that is to protect our single-family neighborhoods. So any of that height, any of that density is going to be limited to existing multifamily zones or commercial zones. So you may have seen and or heard, of new models of redeveloping shopping centers and incorporating housing. And usually you put a lot of density. You put 3 to 5 stories of, anywhere from 200 to 400 units there, and it turns into a nice mix, and it's away from your single-family neighborhood. So a lot of
We'll
those.
get Mr. Caruso to come here and build us an Americana, right?
Well, there you go.
Put the housing
Yeah.
on the top.
Yeah, exactly. So once again, it's been palpable because you've been able to protect your single-family neighborhoods, and that's been taken off the table with SB 9.
Yes, I've noticed that too. It's part of the work that we've done in the past and we'll continue to do here, with this challenge. And that was to give guidance and to staff, but staff was already there. I was going to comment just on one ADU, I think it is categorized as that I've noticed on Old River over by the Rio Hondo Golf Course. That one is right on street side and it's very tastefully, accomplished. It's a beautiful, addition to that property there and does what, the goal was. Just a quick question, at the counter, with these ADUs, have you seen from, the completely weird, the completely, really nice, and turn some of that away? You talked about 100 additional. Are we getting, some quality, proposed?
Yeah, and this, all credit goes to staff. They all share counter duties, and they've seen everything in terms of product. Just today, I was talking to Alfonso, because I caught an inquiry of SB 9, and I was curious just because the topic's been on the top of our mind. And the inquiry more is, how can I assess the value of my property in terms of what my maximum build is? So we're getting a lot of those questions as well in terms of either as investment properties, that people have currently or are planning to buy. And in terms of what you mentioned, I've seen the same. So my commute home is on Brookshire, heading north. And there's a really nice ADU that's done just a couple blocks away from here. And when I saw it, and you see those kind of things, the first thing I did was get a little nervous because I'm thinking, oh, geez, that's the route that all the council members take to get to City Hall. So, somebody might flag it and find out what the heck's going on if it's low quality. And, kudos to staff once again. It looks great. It really does in terms of the architecture, really aligns with the primary unit. And it looks like it's going to be used as a rental unit because it has a separate entry and has kind of a kind of a connected but disconnected perspective from the primary residence in terms of somebody accessing it. So there's good product out there, and there's challenging times that we've gone through to get to that good product as well.
Got it, yes, and I very much appreciate that effort, so thank you.
Okay, moving on. Does the Director of Community Development have any report on city council actions?
No report tonight, Chair Duarte.
Okay, the public hearing for PLN -21-00111 has been continued to the December 15th meeting. So moving on to the non-agenda public comments. This portion provides an opportunity for the public to address the Planning Commission on items within the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission and not listed on the agenda. It is requested but not required that you state your name, address, and subject matter upon which you wish to speak. Please limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. Pursuant to the Brown Act, no discussion or action other than a brief response, referral to the city manager, city council, city staff, or schedule for a subsequent agenda shall be taken by the Planning Commission on any issue brought forth under this section. Do we have anybody that'd like to make a comment on the non-agenda public comments? Please, here, step up here.
Hi,
Hi.
my name is Oscar with the ADU guys. We specialize in ADUs, and I had a question in regards to JDU. Am I asking the correct?
Sure, sir. To your advantage tonight, you've got all of our city planners here. What I would would suggest is Alfonso could step out with you and answer any questions that you
Oh,
have.
sorry. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, no,
Not a problem.
Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
Yes.
You hit the big.
yeah. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no one. Going on to our consent calendar, there are 2 items on the calendar, 3 and 4. We don't have any quorum for the September 15th, 2021 minutes, so that will also be continued to December 15th. We do have quorum for the November 17th, 2021 minutes. So, is
I'll make a
there-
motion to approve.
Okay.
I'll second. Oh, got it.
Okay, please place your votes.
Okay, great.
Okay, and the motion passes with all 3 in favor to approve the minutes from the November 17th Planning Commission meeting.
Okay, great. Moving
May-
on. Go ahead.
I apologize, Mary. The voting indicates the public hearing item that was continued to the next meeting. Can you pull up the next voting for the non-agenda public comment?
Second one.
Mary, we should be able to take the vote. It's showing the November 17th minutes, and we'll just note that, oh, there it goes.
Sorry for the delay. Go ahead and place your vote again.
Okay, November 7th, yeah, here we go. November 17th.
Okay, the motion passes with 3 in favor and 0 against to approve the minutes of the November 17th Planning Commission meeting.
Okay, moving on to other business. Do we have any new business, or does commissioners have any questions, any business to discuss? Commissioner Uva?
The only thing I have is that the Christmas parade is this Sunday, and hopefully we'll see all of you there.
Yes. Vice Chair Owens?
I have nothing, Mr. Chair, thank you.
And I have nothing. Does the Director of Community Development have any additional comments?
Yes, thank you, Chair Duarte. We have 2 community meetings coming up of interest. And so, as mentioned, we've been working on an inclusionary housing ordinance, an ordinance that would mandate a percentage of affordable housing to be built with any new housing in the city. And so we engaged a subject matter expert on a financial analysis of that activity, and we rolled out the results of that, the draft results of that, to our City Council's Affordable Housing Subcommittee, and we have our first community meeting to present that to our residents on December 13th. And please follow us on Facebook or social media, as we will be marketing that through our social media outlets and our website as well. We're also going to have a second meeting with the building community, because they're going to be affected by it as well, and that will most likely occur in January. We think that we will be back in front of the Planning Commission in February with a presentation similar to tonight, and then a follow-up meeting with a recommendation to have the council approve that ordinance. Secondly, we work closely with the state of California and their COVID residential rent payment program so that we could leverage it against ours and provide people the most amount of money that they can get. And we have a workshop that's going to be hosted by the state of California on December 15th at 6:30 p.m. At BJR. And once again, that'll be blasted through all of our social media outlets as well. And that's all I have tonight, Chairman.
Okay, great. And we are adjourned.